Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 248 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by the editor-in-chief, the founder, and the president of Rocket Sports, Mr. Rick Stevens. And Rick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Not too bad. We got the F1 happening in Montreal right now. We got Father's Day this weekend as well, so it's been quite busy. Lots of stuff to do.
And the end of the 2022-23 season with the awarding of the Stanley Cup this week. So lots to talk about. Lots to talk about for the Montreal Canadiens, and we're getting very close to the 2023 draft.
Yeah, so on this episode, we'll make sure we get you up to date on everything Montreal Canadiens from this past week, and we'll update you a little bit on the Habs prospects. In segment 2, it's going to be our big topic segment. We're going to entitle this segment, Hughes Gets Aggressive About Moving Up in the Draft. So we'll get you all up to date on those developments. And then segment 3, it's the Have Your Say segment. And our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, what's your draft day dream scenario for Kent Hughes? Trading up from number 5 in the draft or making a draft day trade to acquire Pierre-Luc Dubois? What's the best way for our listeners to reach out and let us know, Rick?
Reach out to us by text at the Rocket Sports text line. It is 585-3-ROCKET. I'll say it again so you don't have to back up the recording. It's 585-3-ROCKET.
And you can also reach out to us on our social medias. It's at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can check out the website, CanadiensConnection.com. So we have 2 fascinating stories from this past week. They were covered in the Habs headlines. Starting things off, big congratulations to the Vegas Golden Knights on winning their first Stanley Cup. They beat the Florida Panthers in 5 games. And we're a very dominant team, very fun to watch. A couple interesting storylines here. Jack Eichel wins Stanley Cup before Connor McDavid does. You have Jonathan Marchessault winning the Conn Smythe after the Florida Panthers gave up on him and actually handed him to the Vegas Golden Knights. So plenty of drama that went on in that series. And for those who watched, there was a lot of good hockey.
There was. And also a tip of the cap to Paul Maurice and the Florida Panthers. Did the unthinkable in taking out the Bruins, the Maple Leafs, the Carolina Hurricanes. They just ran out of gas and ran out of healthy bodies in the final.
So the way too early best odds for next year's Stanley Cup goes to the Colorado Avalanche. I'm guessing the assumption is they'll be able to regroup, get healthier, and maybe change up their roster a little bit. But I don't mind that. Colorado does have one of those teams that's going to be good for the next little while at least.
Absolutely. They top the odds put out right after the Stanley Cup was awarded. BetMGM had them at the top of the list, followed by Edmonton, Toronto, Boston, and Carolina. The usual suspects at the bottom of the list was Montreal, and they were tied with Anaheim, Arizona, and San Jose for the worst odds to win next year's Stanley Cup.
Can't really blame them, to be completely honest, especially based on how this last season went. You hope that Montreal maybe takes a step forward, but giving them the lowest odds, I think that does make sense in the end, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree.
So this past week, Gunther Steiner, the team principal for the Haas F1 team, turned aside shots from Nick Suzuki and Caden Gooley. Nice to see Gunther Steiner putting on the pads. His goaltending techniques looked a little bit awkward and unconventional, but Caden Gooley was pretty complimentary of him.
He did good. I mean, it's tough. He said he hasn't played goalie in like over 30 years, so it's got to be tough for him to get out there. But he looked good. He's a big guy. Like, he's almost bigger than Monty. So he when you're coming down on him, there's not as much net as you probably would have thought there was. So, but he did good.
It was a great event. When they said he was going to be, out there at Brassard with Nick Suzuki, Caden Gooley, and Sam Montembeault, and Sam Montembeault was in shooting garb. I didn't expect Gunther Steiner. I mean, he is the team principal from the Haas F1 team, but he was in full gear, mask and all, and it's been 30 years, more than 30 years, as Caden Gooley said, that he's played, but he didn't do so bad. And I think he had the time of his life. His daughter was there, and to meet the NHLers, and he talked about how the Canadiens are, the greatest franchise in the NHL. And it was just a really, really nice event. It's if you watch the Netflix series, the Drive to Survive series, the McLaren principal, actually it's the CEO of McLaren, Zach Brown, he plays beer league hockey, still does. And it's just interesting that there is this connection with hockey. Gunther Steiner, they customized a mask, and it was Sylvie Marcelea, who designs Sam Montembeault's mask, also designed this special mask for Steiner, and it had the F1, the Haas race car on one side. It had an angry groundhog on the other side, of course. The Canadian Grand Prix, the Montreal circuit, known for groundhogs on the track. It had the name of his wife and his daughter on the back plate. It has his team that he played with. It was, all in all, it was a tremendous event.
Yeah, much better than a lot of the other video content we see this team post. I think the last time we talked about video happening, it was PK Subban playing bubble hockey at center ice. So nice to change things up. Really liked having Gunther Steiner in there, and pretty cool event. Like you said, the masks looked phenomenal as well. So make sure you're checking out Habs Notepad, Habs headlines, and feature articles throughout this busy offseason at thn.com/Montreal. And no, that's not a mistake. We'll actually give you an update on what's going on with that in our third segment, so you'll have to stick around if you want to hear more.
Yeah, and just a little tip for those of us, I'll whisper, so it's just for our group here. If you check out InsideTheCanadiens.com, you'll find us as well.
So, taking a look at our roster news, Canadiens dismissed head athletic therapist Graham Reinbend and head physiotherapist Donald Baumforth. We were expecting some changes to the medical staff department in Montreal after 2 seasons in a row in which Montreal led the league in man games lost. Rick, just before I send it off to a quote from Caden Gooley asking about these firings, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, we knew there was going to be changes to the medical staff at the year-end media availability that was attended by Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes. Jeff Gordon was pretty plain and simple. He said that the Canadiens had led the league in man games lost to injuries for 2 consecutive reasons, and in fact broke the record, is what he said. And that there was going to be changes. It's something that I think it was Kent Hughes that said, we can't put our plans in place if this continues. So we're going to have to make changes. I guess the surprise was how they chose to start making changes. Graham Reinbend had been with the organization in that capacity for 19 seasons. He had been associated with the Canadiens since the late 90s. He well respected in the field. During COVID, he was the captain of that of putting in place protocols. So that was a difficult. Donald Baumforth, less well known, but he's been in that role as head physiotherapist since 2017. But prior to that, he had consulted with the Canadiens in that role. So again, I guess it's not a surprise that that changes are happening. Maybe the fact that those two were kind of centered out was a bit of a surprise.
And we got to hear from Caden Gooley on his thoughts about these firings.
It's obviously tough to see people go, and as a human being, you never want to see someone lose their job, and so it's tough. And obviously, me being injured, I got to build a pretty good relationship with those guys, and again, I just wish them the best and whatever's next for them. And they're great people, great human beings. So whatever comes in store for them next, I just wish them luck. So.
A tough question to be asked. This was while Caden Gooley was part of this F1 event, but reporters wanting to know his feelings about the firings. But I thought he answered it very well. Very complimentary, but kind of rode a middle ground. And kind of a side comment, I think that it's not going to be too long before Caden Gooley has a letter on his jersey as one of the leaders of this team. But it was it's tough news for the players, because Montembeault, when he was suffering with his wrist injury, would have developed a relationship with these guys. Caden Gooley, the same thing, as he said. So it's difficult for them to see these guys moving on.
Yeah, I agree. I think very well said by Caden Gooley. He handled that question pretty well. Might be a little bit awkward asking Caden Gooley that question after only being around the team for 1 year, but seems like he probably had a bit of a relationship there. And like I said, handled very professionally, and I agree. Maybe there will be an A on his chest in the future.
Yeah.
Alex Belzile is reportedly looking for a 2-year one-way contract for the Montreal Canadiens. Right now, Alex Belzile is set to become a UFA. I don't blame him for wanting this. Montreal did call him up at the last half of this season. They kept him up there in a fourth-line role, so I don't blame him for wanting a one-way contract. I hope that this isn't the direction that Montreal goes. I think you can do a little bit better than having an Alex Belzile on your fourth line.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Alex Belzile was fortunate to get into the Canadiens lineup, and he wouldn't have been there. The only reason he was there was because of the huge amount of injuries as they started to pile up for the Canadiens. And last year he got into 31 games for the Canadiens and 31 games for the Laval Rocket. His career, as I said, he's age 31. He has 487 games in the ECHL and ACHL and AHL, just 44 games in the NHL. And most of those, 31 of those, as I said, came last year. The information that he wants a 2-year deal, a one-way contract, comes from our colleague Raphael Doucette of La Poche Bleue. And in that article, Raphael said that he's looking for the same kind of deal that Michael Pezzetta has. Probably not going to happen. I don't think that the Canadiens see him as a one-way contract kind of player. Perhaps if he tamps down those demands, and he was a popular player in Laval amongst the fans, that they would find a way to bring him back. Otherwise, we wish him well as he looks for a contract elsewhere.
Yeah, wore the C in Laval as well, so I think it was a little bit of a surprise that he did get called up. Like you said, very popular guy within Laval. I wouldn't hate it if he ended up returning there, but otherwise, if he's really wanting that one-way contract, he'll definitely have to search elsewhere. But this week, we actually do have a winner, and Rick, let's cue up that stinger.
And now it's time for this week's winners and losers on the Canadiens Connection.
So just the one winner, and Rick, you selected this winner. I think it's a pretty good choice, and there is a very specific reason why we felt we wanted to highlight this week.
Well, it is F1 weekend in Montreal, the Canadian Grand Prix. So we're going to go in that direction with our winner of the week. Hometown guy, born and raised in Montreal, is Lance Stroll, the 24-year-old F1 driver for Aston Martin. He's an interesting driver. His dad is billionaire owner Lawrence Stroll, who funds the Aston Martin team. But Lance Stroll is carving out his own niche as an F1 driver, and really just 20 spots, just 20 drivers in F1. So it's a pretty exclusive kind of company. So being at home and in his home race, and I should say that there's been a number of drivers from F1 that have tried to make connections with the Canadian Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas from Alfa Romeo, he has a lumberjack theme which you got to seek out and find. It's a great helmet that he's going to wear, especially for this race. Charles Leclerc, F1 driver with Ferrari, he has a tribute helmet to Gilles Villeneuve, and of course that's what the circuit is named after, Gilles Villeneuve. And if you've been at the start-finish line, you'll see a salute Gilles there. But Lance Stroll went another way, and his helmet is fascinating. The whole top of his helmet has QR codes all over the top, and if you select the QR codes, it's all his favorite places in Montreal. The Bell Center is on there. His favorite deli is on there. LCC, Lower Canada College, which I know pretty well, and where he attended, is on there. And Lance has chosen. Let's let Lance tell you what he's going to do.
Hey guys, it's Lance Stroll here. It's Canadian Grand Prix Race Week. Here we have my special edition Canadian Grand Prix helmet. We've all seen how bad the wildfires across Quebec and Canada have been since the beginning of June. So in order to help all the people that have been affected, I will be donating my special edition Canadian Grand Prix helmet, boots, and suit up for auction to help raise money and awareness. I'd like to thank everyone who's helping, the emergency services, all the volunteers. Join me in showing them some love and support, and let's have a great weekend.
So many people have been affected by the wildfires. Our friends in the Maritimes, in Quebec as well, out west, and the smoke has played havoc with in places to the south. Our friends in the U.S. So I think this is a great gesture by Lance to raise money for the Canadian Red Cross. He's putting up his helmet and other gear. And if you want to make a bid, if you're able to make a bid, it's mycause.bid/Stroll. Right now, the leading bid is at $50,000. So this is going to, whatever it finishes at, this is going to be a big donation for the Canadian Red Cross. Lance says he understands that not everybody's going to be able to bid. So at that address, there's also a place where you can donate whatever $5, $10, whatever you have to the Canadian Red Cross in his name. So this is a tremendous, I think, worthy of the winner of the week, Lance Stroll. Not a hockey player, a guy who enjoys hockey, a guy who loves the Canadiens and gets to the Bell Center whenever he can, but a great gesture to help the people who have been affected by the wildfires.
Yeah, great pick for the winner this week. Certainly love that he's going out of his way to raise money for charity. The Red Cross is a great foundation, so extra points and great selection for a winner this week. So now it's time to get to our Habs prospect report.
This edition of the Rocket Report is brought to you by AHL.Report, your premier source for the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens. AHL.Report is a proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network.
So we'll start things off in the Quebec Major Junior League, where the recent winner of the Memorial Cup, Patrick Roy, has resigned as from his position as general manager and head coach of the Quebec Rampart. This is something that he did talk about doing earlier this season. He doesn't seem to have any offers from the NHL. I don't know if he's looking for an NHL job quite yet or if he's just looking for some time off, but not really a big surprise. But you know what? Patrick Roy, he did have some success in the queue, working 2 different positions, not just the one. I do wonder if an NHL team out there might bite on him eventually.
He was asked at the press conference, and RDS tweeted out his answer, and in French it was absolutely nothing. He hasn't heard from, according to him, he hasn't heard from an NHL team. I think with the placements and Mike Babcock coming to Columbus, that there's no vacancies at this point, but there could still be some changes over the summer. But Patrick Roy said that he felt it was mission accomplished in junior hockey, and that it was time to move on. And he's off for a vacation, a golfing vacation in Scotland, Ireland, and Italy. And perhaps his phone will ring while he's on the golf course.
It sounds like a nice vacation. I'm a little bit jealous of that one. But you know who else is doing a little bit of traveling? The other Patrick Williams, our AHL reporter. He's actually been checking out the Calder Cup final between the Hershey Bears and Coachella Valley Firebirds. The Hershey Bears are the affiliate for Washington, and Coachella Valley is the affiliate for the Seattle Kraken. The series currently is tied 2-2. Been a really fun series to watch. There's been a couple games there where I've been super impressed with the Seattle goalie, Joey Decord. And Rick, have you been following this one?
Yeah, it's been a great series. All the wins have all come at home. 2 for Coachella Valley at home, and then when the series came back to Pennsylvania, the Hershey Bears have won 2 at home in Hershey. Game 3, it's a 2-3-2 series setup. So Game 3 is Saturday tonight in Hershey, and we'll see what happens. But a great series to watch, and whether you're in the U.S. or Canada, you should be able to. The AHL has made it available. You should be able to watch this series if you're still interested in getting your hockey fix.
Some news from the Laval Rocket. The Laval Rocket have signed forward Riley McKay and forward/defenseman John Parker Jones, each to 1-year, one-way AHL contracts. So I guess this is adding some size and some physicality. John Parker Jones is absolutely massive. Riley McKay, I think he's known for quite a bit of physical play. I think where this is intriguing is that Laval seems to be locking down a lot of, I guess, guys that have experience in the ECHL to one-way AHL contracts. We talked about Gallipo getting a contract not too long ago. I really hope that Laval keeps some spots open for their prospects, though.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's a little odd, but they have their priorities. I think one of the complaints about the Laval Rocket this past year is that they were very individualistic. That they didn't look like a team out there. When they won, it was individuals taking over a game. The other characteristic that they had, they were a very undisciplined team. And you had Riley McKay, although he's not a player of size, but he was an instigator. He only played 23 games for the Laval Rocket, but he had 118 minutes in penalties. That is an unheard of 5.13 penalty minutes per game. Far and away led the league in that particular category. John Parker Jones took a lot of penalties. Xavier Simoneau, Alex Belzile, the 31 games, taking a lot of penalties, undisciplined penalties. So it's curious that they're going back to that well. But as you said, we want to see the roster, and Coach Uhl has said that he expects his roster to be a lot younger. He expects an influx of prospects. We want to make sure that there are enough spots for prospects when they get there.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that I agree with insulating the prospects with this type of player. It doesn't seem like either one add a whole lot outside of their physicality and penalties. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, that's absolutely fair.
So, well, it's going to be a long off season for the Laval Rocket as well. You can find all of our content about Canadiens prospects at thn.com/Montreal. Some news on the NHL entry draft. Each week leading up to the draft, we will focus on the latest news and rankings relevant for Montreal Canadiens fans. And it looks like the NHL has finally released the order of the selection of the 2023 draft. Montreal, of course, has 2 picks in the first round, and they will be number 5 and number 31. I don't think this is a big surprise for anyone at this point.
No, it's something that officially happens once the season is over. That the NHL puts out this official order of selection. The Canadiens have the 2 first-round picks. They have 11 picks in total in the 7 rounds of the draft, and so Kent Hughes has got a pretty good arsenal at his disposal of picks that he can make or picks that he can package to bring in talent that he wants.
I think there's like 3 picks in that 4th round as well, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with those later round picks, but we'll continue to give you updates on the draft as more news comes out. We'll take a look at some news from around the league. Starting off, Henri Richard was posthumously diagnosed with stage 3 chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. It is a progressive brain disease associated with repetitive traumatic brain injuries, including concussions and repeated blows to the head.
This is a topic that is a bit controversial in the NHL, not so much in other sports. NFL has acknowledged that repetitive head injuries and the kind that happen in the NFL can lead to CTE. I think this was pretty brave. The courage of the Richard family and Denis Richard, the son of Henri, participated in this study. I was at the University of Laval, where the family made a donation and then made the results public. And the reason that the family and spokesperson Denis Richard, he said that he hopes that the diagnosis will lead to more preventative efforts, and also made the point that this is a disease that impacts athletes beyond football. And we remember very famously Gary Bettman saying there was no connection between NHL hockey and CTE. The studies seem to go against that. And the foundation that has done a lot of these studies said that the 17 donations that they've received from NHL players, that 16 of them have been diagnosed with CTE. And that includes another Canadian, former Canadian Ralph Backstrom. And through this, we've heard from Ken Dryden, who's been a proponent for very severe penalties for head hits in the NHL. And he made the point that Henri Richard wasn't a fighter. He was tough as nails, but not the kind of player that you typically associate with CTE, yet he had it. So Ken Dryden feels that more research should be done, and the NHL should acknowledge that this is a real issue.
So it's one of those topics that can be a little bit uncomfortable to talk about, but we do think that it is important to note and understand how these studies are going along. The NHL buyout window opened on Friday. Will the Habs take advantage of this? I think there are a couple candidates, but so far not yet. But the Vancouver Canucks certainly jumped on the opportunity to buy out Oliver Ekman-Larsson. That didn't take them very long to do it all.
No, that didn't. And you can debate whether that was the right move or not. They wanted to free up some cap room. They're going to be paying Ekman-Larsson until the 2031 season, I believe. For the Canadiens, it was interesting that Cap Friendly, I think they crowdsourced this list that they came up with of their top 8 buyout candidates, and three of the top 8 are Canadians. Number 3 is Brendan Gallagher. Number 5 is Mike Hoffman, and number 7 Yoel Armia. Personally, my own opinion, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that the Canadiens want to carry any money past next year, and however that is, however the buyout is spread over a number of years, I don't think they want to carry money in the future. But particularly Brendan Gallagher's contract is going to be difficult to buy out, is going to be difficult to trade, is going to be difficult to do really anything with.
Yeah, I agree. I think with the case of Hoffman, Armia, and Gallagher, I think you're better off either waiting them out or trying to find a suitor to trade with.
Yep.
I'm not an expert on the cap math. Is definitely not my strong suit, if I'm being honest. But I can't imagine that it would be worth it in the long run to buy any of those players out.
Yeah, I agree.
Some more news out of Philadelphia. John LeClair was hired by the Philadelphia Flyers as a special advisor. Looks like the Flyers are continuing to add former players to their front office, and now they have Danny Briere, they have Patrick Sharp, and now John LeClair adds to that list.
And John LeClair always comes with a little bit of a sting for Canadiens fans, because we know what kind of player he became for Philadelphia and the Legion of Doom. And that was one of the trades that most Canadiens fans regret, him going to Philadelphia.
The Flames also add a former player to their front office. Ginla was hired by the Flames as a special advisor as well, to be the advisor to the general manager, Craig Conroy. So I think there'll be a fun relationship in that front office between those two former players.
And former line mates. So there's some established chemistry there already. I think that's a good match.
And here's one with the Montreal Canadiens connection. Michael Andlauer is the new owner of the Ottawa Senators. Currently, he is a 10% stake owner of the Montreal Canadiens, but he will have to sell that off before he takes over the ownership completely, as I believe that is a bit of a conflict of interest. He ends up buying the Sens for $950 million, so a little bit under $1 billion, but it sounds like the Melnick sisters will be hanging on to 10%, so Andlauer takes on 90% amongst his group. Andlauer probably won't be able to take over the ownership until later in the summer, and we'll see what changes come from that. Lots of rumors going around at the moment, but it's nice to see that the sale is finally done. I was, to be honest, I was getting tired of hearing about all the various potential owners dropping out. And after all the celebrities that could have been involved, I think they ended up with a good hockey guy, maybe one of the more boring options, if I'm being honest. But that's not a bad thing for boring old Ottawa, is it?
Not a bad thing at all, because he is a good hockey guy. And, of course, there's a couple of Canadiens connections. Also owns the Hamilton, or as it's called now, the Brantford Bulldogs, temporarily, an OHL team. But it was prior to that, the Hamilton Bulldogs were the OHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens. Andlauer, very close connection. Matt Turk, the GM, formerly a scout with Montreal. And yes, he owns a portion of the Canadiens. I've seen it reported differently in different places. The percentage that he owns of the Canadiens is somewhere between 10 and 20%. As you said, he's going to have to divest himself of that share of the Montreal Canadiens. And I think it's Frank Cervelli in the Daily Faceoff that did the calculation and estimated that he may stand to gain about $600 million from the sale, and that then could be put towards the 2/3 what could be of the cost of the $950 million that he's paying for 90% of the Ottawa Senators. Going to be really interesting to see who if he has an influence on hockey decisions. Lots of discussion about Steve Staios, who was the GM in Hamilton, now in Edmonton. I think Senators fans should be excited about this.
Yeah, I'll also mention that there is a Patrick Waugh-sized rumor
Yeah,
involving Michael Andlauer as well, potentially taking over as head coach. But we'll see how it goes. Like I said, the sale can't be finalized until towards the end of the offseason, so that doesn't really leave him a ton of time to work with before the season officially starts.
Just to fill in the blanks there, Michael Andlauer has played a part in the recent hirings. And when Kent Hughes was hired, Michael Andlauer was part of the interview process. Patrick Waugh received an interview. So there's that connection.
Yeah. Now it's time to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois.
No.
We're going to keep doing this over and over again. It seems like the LA Kings have emerged as a new favorite to be involved in the Pierre-Luc Dubois sweepstakes. And here's what Elliot Friedman had to say about this.
I think the Kings have made this interesting. One of the more recent podcasts, they said, I think they're in this. Mm-hmm. I think they've leaned in very hard. And I think that they've made it very clear to Winnipeg. If they haven't made an offer, they have basically let Winnipeg know we're in and we're willing to make this work.
This is fascinating from a number of respects, but I think I keep seeing out there in social media that fans are assuming that there's only one destination for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that's Montreal, and that because he has said he would like to come to Montreal, that somehow that's going to handcuff the Winnipeg Jets and Kevin Cheveldayoff, and that there's going to be some hometown discount in the salary negotiations, and we'll be able to get him for a song. And we keep hearing that. That's just it's silly. It's silly talk is what it is. And yes, of course, if he's going to be made available, and he said that he's not going to be signing another contract in Winnipeg, that there are other teams in the NHL that would be interested in having him, and there are other teams where he would be interested to go. The LA Kings makes a lot of sense from a couple of different perspectives. Now, remember Luc Robitaille with the Kings, very good friend of Pat Brisson, the agent for PLD, and you have to think that the Jets paid a lot to bring Pierre-Luc Dubois in, Patrick Laine, Jack Roslovic. They're going to be wanting to get some pretty good assets back when they trade him. And what do the Kings have to offer? Well, if you look down the middle, you have Kopitar, we have Phil Deneau, of course, Gabe Vilardi, and Quentin Byfield. And it came out of, in addition to Elliot Friedman's comments, it came out this week that the Kings would probably be willing to offer a Byfield in exchange in a trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. That would be, I would think, pretty attractive for the Jets. Byfield, just 20 years old, a big power center. He was the second overall pick in the 2020 draft. This is going to be interesting. Now the other wrinkle here that I'll just toss in is that the Kings also, they need goaltending. And another player that Kevin Cheveldayoff has to deal with this summer, he wants out, is Hellebuck. There maybe is a fit for the Kings. I think that the Jets, that the Jets would be interested in a Byfield in terms of a talent, in terms of replacement player, in terms of cost control, and I think it advises us when they were asking for a Kirby Dach in return, that those weren't just, pie in the sky kind of rumors, that they'd be looking for the number 5 pick in this draft. They'd be looking for a Kirby Dach. They'd be looking for serious talent. And anybody who suggests that Yoel Armia or Christian Dvorak are gonna consummate this trade between Montreal and Winnipeg is dreaming for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's probably a first involved in that. There's a top prospect. If we're talking Los Angeles, I wonder if an Alex Turcotte could make sense for Winnipeg, maybe more of a project there. But I like the Byfield connection there. That's certainly an intriguing one for Winnipeg. And if you're getting a call and Byfield's brought up, you certainly have to listen to that one, right? That's an interesting pick for sure.
Well, it's going to be interesting. This is probably going to the Jets are kind of under a timeline. They want to avoid any kind of offer sheet happening, so it's likely going to happen either before the draft or on the draft floor that this kind of trade is going to be made. And it's not just the Canadiens and the Kings, as you and I have talked about. New York Rangers, might be in the mix. And Pierre-Luc Dubois wants to be in a visible market like Montreal or Los Angeles or New York. Seems to fit with and his agent has said he'd be willing to go to New York. So lots of pieces in play as we get closer to the draft.
Yeah, I don't know if the money would work at all, but I wonder if that's something a Toronto Maple Leafs could be interested in as well, as I think they would be in the market for another center this offseason as well. So plenty of teams out there, I'm sure, will be very interested in Pierre-Luc Dubois, and we'll be here to give you all your Pierre-Luc Dubois news as it comes out. But for now, I think we'll take a little break here. We'll hear a message from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then we'll get to our big topic segment. Hughes gets aggressive about moving up in the draft. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Light the lamp during the hockey playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook. New customers can make a $5 bet and score $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700 on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, KS. 21 and over in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling sources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/hockey terms.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella, and you can find me on Twitter at the Spinella. With me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. Make sure to give him a follow on Twitter as well, at Rocket Sports. You can also follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and check out the website, CanadiensConnection.com. Just a reminder here, too, also subscribe to the Canadiens Connection podcast on your favorite player, on your favorite podcasting app, wherever you get your podcasts. That way you never miss a single episode. And this segment, we have plenty of fun draft talk to talk about. Kent Hughes seems to be throwing a lot of things out there towards the media that make things interesting. I don't know if it's all smoke and mirrors or if he's being very serious about this, but we'll get to that pretty soon. The NHL entry draft in Nashville is quickly approaching. The major scouting publications have released their final draft rankings. And, well, is there a consensus pick here, Rick? Because I feel like you have Bedard at number 1. I think Fantilli number 2 is pretty consistent. Number 3, I think it's been a little bit all over the place. Taking a look at what Sportsology has at number 5, where the Canadiens are currently picking, they have a Zach Benson. You take a look elsewhere, and you open up the Black Book that Jerome Berube puts out every year. He has Dmitry Simashev at number 5, which is interesting. Rick, you're looking around here. What other names are you seeing, and is there any kind of consistency after those top 2 picks?
It's a strange year. First, really talented draft. We've heard that over and over and over again from our draft experts. And if you missed any of our draft shows, we had 3 shows in a row with draft experts. Episode Canadiens Connection episode 244, 245, and 246, where we spoke with Russ Cohn, Sam Cosentino, and Jerome Berube. And even in their lists, and we asked them to come up with 3 players who would be in the conversation for the Montreal Canadiens, there wasn't a lot of overlap. They talked about Michkov, they talked about Will Smith, talked about Ryan Leonard, Zach Benson, Dalibor Dvorsky, David Reinbacher. And when you look at these final draft rankings, yes, everyone has Connor Bedard number 1. Everyone, for the most part, has Adam Fantilli or Leo Carlsson at 2 or 3. Some in not that the order is the same, but the pick is the same. Many of them have Michkov at number 4. Again, these are rankings, not mocks. And then at 5, it's all over the place, and there's actually wild differences between the ranking agencies. As you said, the Hockey Prospect Black Book has Simashev, a defenseman from junior hockey in Russia, at 5. Simashev could be, in the teens, in the 20s, elsewhere. There's Gabe Perreault, who Hockey Prospect has at 9. You'll find him in the high teens or low 20s elsewhere. It's just that there's so much talent that the availability to scout these players has been different, particularly with the Russian players. So the rankings are really all over the place, and that makes it tough for trying to figure out what the Canadiens are going to do in this draft, and difficult for fans, because we've seen the arguments about, yes, it has to be Michkov. No, it can never be Michkov. Even in the responses that we receive on our text line, on our email line, or on YouTube, there's been a lot of division over who the Canadiens should pick with their 5th overall pick.
Yeah, and Michkov, like you said, probably the biggest wild card of this draft. We know that he's committed to the KHL for the next 3 seasons. Some are saying that he has that superstar potential, though. And Rick, I don't know what the latest is on Michkov, but can you give us any updates on what's happening there? Do you think the Canadiens could be interested? Do you think another team might jump up and take him in the top 5?
Well, it's fascinating that Kent Hughes at the Combine almost went out of his way, as we talked about last week, to discourage fans from thinking that the Canadiens would be interested in Michkov. He said no one from the organization has seen him play in person. It's only been video scouting. Was he being transparent? Was he being honest? Was he trying to send a message? We talked about that last week. It was funny, in the 32 Thoughts podcast, Elliot Friedman said the same, and I was told exactly the same thing from an amateur scout when this was years ago. And GM had made a comment. I put in a text and said, is that true? And he said to me, everybody lies at this time of year. All the teams lie at this time of year. Elliot Friedman said he got the same sort of message. So was Kent Hughes trying to send a message about Michkov and show a lack of interest. And was that message out to other GMs? We just don't know. And the whole issue of teams getting access to Michkov, I think that's what we learned this week. The latest about him is that, number one, he's let it be known that he will be at the draft in person in Nashville. That we didn't know and we didn't know if he'd be allowed to go. Yes, he will be at the draft. So teams have reached out to him and said that they'd like to meet him and talk with him before the draft. And he hasn't offered any kind of commitment. He is said to be putting together a list of teams that he prefers, teams that he's willing to meet with. And he remains this man of mystery. And, a little bit aloof. Even those who did try and get access to him say that there's these advisors around him, that it's difficult to get through. It's difficult to talk to him. I don't know. Does if he's that selective, is he the kind of, like, talent-wise? Yes, a lot of talent there. And maybe at the top of the draft, if Connor Bedard wasn't in this draft. Doesn't like playing defense. Is a little bit, aloof, as I said. Is he the kind of character person that Kent Hughes or Jeff Gordon will want to bring in? Who knows? And will he meet with the Canadiens prior to the draft so they can get some more information up? Who knows? But he'll be at the draft. That's the new news that we have.
But I think you said it right when you said he was the man of mystery. The talent's probably there. I think some people would argue that he could go 2 or 3 in this draft. But again, it seems like it's a bit of a risk. And if he's having to be this selective and it's hard to gain access to him, that's definitely troublesome. And that definitely talks me out of having a whole lot of interest personally anyway.
No, I agree.
But, since we just talked about someone who's probably a riskier pick, is there a safe choice for the Canadiens to make at this draft? Like we just talked about, everyone's rankings seem to be quite different after 1 and 2. And there's a different player available on almost every list at number 5. Is there a safe pick? From everything I've heard, I think a Reinbacher is probably the safe pick in the most literal sense. You hear that he's got that very high floor, low ceiling type defenseman. Yeah, that'd be pretty safe. I think it's safe to say you get a good player out of that. Kent Hughes has a relationship with Will Smith, being a former coach of his when he was a lot younger. If Kent Hughes is that enamored with Will Smith and is that comfortable picking a Will Smith in the top 5 of the draft, I think to an extent that's considered kind of safe. But Rick, I'll get you to weigh into this one as well.
Well, we kind of independently came to the same choice with respect to a safe choice, and that would be David Reinbacher. And the reason that he's a safe choice is kind of that high floor, and that yes, there's expectations that he will be a number 1 defenseman right now. And Kent Hughes spoke about it, the mature defensive game that he has, and add to that the mobility and fact that he's a right-handed defenseman, capable of offense. Reinbacher is going to be either a number 1 right-handed defenseman, or he's going to, worst case, he's going to be in your top 4. I think he's got the most mature game right now and complete game. Are the Canadiens want to go? Will they want to go safe? And we know that there's also a push that they may not have the opportunity to get a top pairing defenseman another time. So yes, with each of the others, and with Will Smith, as you said, there's a safety in knowing him. But he's got big holes in his game and a lack of physicality and getting into tough areas. There, when you go with each one, there's some risk. Not so much with Reinbacher, but will the Canadiens want to do that? Do they want to make a safe choice?
And that leads us here, where we find out that the Canadiens' general manager has been very busy working the phones. Reportedly, Kent Hughes has reached out to the San Jose Sharks and the Anaheim Ducks to inquire about the availabilities of the 4th overall and the 2nd overall picks, respectively. I'm guessing at some point he contacted Columbus, but those talks didn't really go anywhere. I hear Yarmo can be a very intimidating guy, but it's fine. I think probably it's more likely that the Canadiens could move up one spot to number 4, as opposed to being able to move up to number 2, which is a spot where I think most people would anticipate Fantilli gets picked. I don't know if Anaheim would be that serious about leaving Fantilli on the board. But this leads me to this question for you, Rick. Why now, and what's the plan here? Is it just Kent Hughes exploring all the options available because that's, I guess, part of his job? Is he using the media as a bit of a weapon here to deceive some people? Is he legitimately looking to move up, do you think?
So first, we should say that, guys, why are you reporting rumors? We don't get into the rumor game. We just don't, unless multiple sources are reporting the same thing. And we had that this week. Multiple sources, Radio Canada and The Athletic, were both reported that Kent Hughes had serious conversations to move up to 4th, and serious conversation with San Jose, and serious conversation with Anaheim. That was reported by Arpan Basu. So this is happening, and there's lots of people out there saying, my goodness, Kent Hughes is being really, really aggressive this year. And the question comes, why? As you just asked. Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, we've had draft expert on after another, and they've all said, there hasn't been a draft like this in the last 5 or 10 years. The talent at the top is could go as number 1 in any of the other drafts. There's a lot of real good talent at the very top of the draft, and it's a very deep draft as well. So why not be aggressive when you have that opportunity? Why move up? Well, it takes away the any kind of Michkov temptation. Why move up? Well, remember last year, Kent Hughes could go in any direction he wanted. He had complete control of the draft. This gives him more control if he moves up. And it's Kent Hughes is looking ahead. And remember, he said, I'm not guaranteeing we're going to be in the playoffs, but that's where our target is. That's where our focus is going to be. Now, if the Canadiens are a playoff team or close to being a playoff team next year, where does that draft pick end up? Mid pack, and they won't have an opportunity to make to get the kind of talent that they are this year. So if they can move up one, if they can do a miracle and move up to 2. Kent Hughes is going to do everything in his power to try and make that happen this year.
And I'd be pretty excited about that too. Adam Fantilli is a great player. I've watched him a few times. I would absolutely love to have him on the Montreal Canadiens. If they even end up moving up to number 4, the potential of getting like a Leo Carlsson or whoever else might be available is pretty nice too. And I do agree with you. I think that just really gives Kent Hughes the control that he might want, rather than having to sit back and wait for the other teams to make their decisions 1 through 4 before he can make his decision at number 5.
And I think you mentioned Fantilli. Most mocks have him at 2 or 3. Most mocks have Leo Carlsson at 2 or 3. Interesting. We know that Kent Hughes and an entourage went to the World Championships. The 3 players in the draft that were there at the World Championships were Leo Carlsson, Adam Fantilli, and David Reinbacher.
That's interesting. So they definitely got a first-hand look at this, and maybe Kent Hughes is legitimately excited about these players. I would be too, to be honest, if I was in his position. But what would it take to move up in the draft like that? Is there some precedence for something like this happening? I don't think it's very common, at least in the NHL, that a team's able to move up like further to the top of the draft from number 5, or even move within that top 5 of the draft. A lot of teams really covet those top 5 picks, and it's very hard to move them off of those high draft picks. Rick, I know you do have a story that relates to Pierre-Luc Dubois, of course, that can kind of, I guess, give us a little bit of precedence as to the Habs previously trying to accomplish something similar.
Well, you're right. This really doesn't happen very often, and you have to go back almost 20 years to the last time. One of those top 5 picks was traded in the NHL, and Columbus and Carolina were involved way back then. And it's odd. It's really odd to me because we have lots of listeners who, they love hockey, but they also follow other sports. And it's pretty common in the NFL. And if you watch the NFL, the 2023 draft in April, in the first 10, 12 picks, there must have been 5 trades. And you had Carolina and Chicago involved, and Carolina moving up from 9 to 1. And all kinds of swaps in between, we have Brian, who follows the NFL on our team. I have an expert in my family. My brother knows the NFL way better than I do, and he talked about how there's a formula, there's a chart, there's a trade chart, a trade value chart, and this was started, I think, in the 90s by Jimmy Johnson. That he talked about, and there's been charts that have been modernized since then, and a value is placed on every pick in the draft, and so if you're trading one of those top 5 picks, and that pick has a value of 1,000 or 3,000 or whatever it is, the picks that you put together to trade for that have to come out equal. Not saying that your trade partner has to accept it, but everybody knows the rules. Everybody knows that it's a reasonably fair trade. In the NHL, it's kind of Wild West, and there's a lot bigger reluctance to part with one of those picks. You referred to Pierre-Luc Dubois and the year that he was drafted, and that was 2016, the draft in Buffalo. I mentioned my brother. He was there with me. My nephew was there. We were seated together. And we had a big contingent, as we do every year. We bring fans to the draft. And I think we had 35, 40 people with us in our section. Great seats, great view. And we remember that the Canadiens, that was the draft where Pierre-Luc Dubois was there, but Austin Matthews was the number 1 pick. And we pretty well we were sure that Austin Matthews was going first for Toronto. After that, it was there had been a lot of speculation that Jesse Puljujarvi would go second. The Canadiens had the 9th pick overall, and as the draft started, right when it started, we noticed Marc Bergevin making his way, calling Jarmo Kekalainen, the GM for Columbus, over. They met kind of in a neutral spot. And they had a long discussion, and we didn't know what was happening. Columbus was picking 3rd, the Winnipeg Jets at 2nd. And there was a long discussion, and then they each went away to their own table. The Jets made their pick. It was a bit of a surprise in picking Patrick Laine. Turned out to be the right one, rather than picking Puljujarvi. And then it came to the Columbus pick. Now, there was 2 more meetings at that neutral spot on the floor that we witnessed between Marc Bergevin and Kekalainen. And the last one got heated. Marc Bergevin was animated and mad and just tore a strip off the Columbus general manager, and Kaikalainen just waved him off and walked away, leaving a purple-faced Marc Bergevin on the floor. You didn't see any of this if you're watching on TV, but all of us that were there witnessed this major event. Columbus went to the podium and picked Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Bergevin was hot. Why was that? Well, we didn't learn until later that there was a deal in place for the Montreal Canadiens to move from 9. They were going to trade up to 5. Pick 5 was owned by the Vancouver Canucks. And the trade, we don't know all the details. But it was PK Subban who was involved in going to Vancouver. And with the 5th overall pick, it was his intention, Marc Bergevin, to choose Pierre-Luc Dubois. At that time, Columbus was expected to pick the Finn, Puljujarvi. Edmonton would probably have gone with the defenseman, Julevi, and then Vancouver's pick would have been turned over to Montreal, who would have picked Dubois, and Marc Bergevin would have had that as his crowning achievement, I'm sure. So he was furious that Columbus went in a different direction and spoiled this whole arrangement that he had set up to move up in the draft.
And the reason why I think this story is so incredible and relevant to what's happening today is that it gives some precedence for Montreal trying to move up into that top 5, and the value of it involving a PK Subban and probably that number 9 pick. That's a pretty substantial price to pay to move up that amount of spots. And I think my other takeaway is it's interesting that it wasn't Montreal trying to move up to 3 to take Dubois, where he ultimately ended up being picked. It was to number 5. So it seemed like they knew some information about the direction that some other teams might go, and Bergevin trying to sway Jarmo Kekalainen one way so that Dubois could be left on the table for him. Really incredible story that you had there, Rick.
It's fascinating, and as we know, PK Subban days later was traded to Nashville for Shea Weber. The Canadiens went ahead with the 9th overall pick, picking Mikhail Sergachev, and then sometime later, the disastrous trade for Jonathan Drouin, who was kind of seen in Bergevin's eyes as the replacement for Dubois, and that worked out terribly for the Canadiens and for Marc Bergevin.
Yeah, so unfortunately, who knows what could have been if that did ultimately work out, but Montreal did get a pretty good run to the Stanley Cup final out of it, I guess, with Shea Weber at the very least. But in terms of what it would cost to move up into the top 5 of the current draft, Montreal currently with number 5, looking at the options of number 2 and number 4. The price, I don't know. This is where it gets very difficult. Montreal does have that second first overall pick, the 31st one. Is that going to be enough to entice another team to move back a few spots? They also have that Calgary first rounder in 2025. Is that something that could be interesting for Anaheim, being able to stock up another first round pick a few years down the line? Other than that, in terms of assets that Montreal has, I'm not sure that there's a whole lot that could be used to entice other teams to want to move back a few spots, is there?
Yeah, it's the first thing is we don't know what it would cost because it hasn't been done in a long time.
Yeah.
But if you're moving from 5th to 4th, and you would assume in that case that the team that with either of these trades, the team would have in their mind that they're going to get the player that they want anyway, more or less. So if we're talking about a trade between Montreal and San Jose, they swap picks. I don't think you'd have to add a second round pick to get that, maybe a third round pick to move up. Would that be enough for San Jose? Don't know. Montreal moving from 5 to 2, trading with Anaheim. Anaheim not in a rush; they're in a rebuild. Would the swapping picks and adding in a second first round pick, that 31st pick overall, would that get it done? I think that's absolutely the minimum to make that astronomical kind of jump from 5 to 2. We don't know, again, because there's very little precedent for this in the NHL.
Yeah, so it'll be very interesting to monitor this. I don't know if Montreal's going to be able to accomplish this. We know that Kent Hughes loves to use the media to send out some signals. We know last year when Montreal was at the top of the draft, they really didn't give anyone much to work with in terms of which direction they might be leaning. So I do think it is possible that Kent Hughes is just putting up some smoke and mirrors to throw some people off the scent of where he might be leaning. That's certainly a possibility. You can't confirm that, unfortunately. But like I said, this will be a very interesting draft to monitor for Montreal. And Rick, do you have any final regards that you want to have on this topic?
Well, I think you better listen to the Canadiens Connection next week because this story is likely to change because there's so many players involved. I mean the other teams involved, and getting their intentions known, as well as volatility amongst in the rankings. So this is an unfolding story, and you're not going to want to miss next week because that'll be our last show before the draft happens in Nashville.
So before we send it off into our final break on the show, we'll leave you this to think about. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week. What's your draft day dream scenario for Kent Hughes? Trading up from number 5 in the draft or making a draft day trade to land Pierre-Luc Dubois? Make sure you let us know. And for now, we'll take our final break here. And please stay with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The team at All Habs wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, their affiliates, and their prospects, log in to allhabs.net, your year-round resource for anything Habs related. That's allhabs.net.
Welcome back to episode 248 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and give us a follow on our social. Oh, I did say that. Give us a follow on our social media at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and check out our website, CanadiensConnection.com. Also, feel free to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And Rick, we do have a little bit of an announcement today. You may have noticed in the first segment there, I was saying that you can check out all of our content at thn.com/Montreal. Rick, what do you have to say about that?
Well, we do have some exciting news, and we've been making some changes and making changes to help our audience, both those of you who love listening to the podcast and those of you who like our feature articles, who like the Habs notepad, who like the Habs headline articles. We've been trying to move to get those in one place. We moved away. We built the All Habs Hockey magazine, and that was very successful. And now we're making a move to bring our AHL coverage, our prospect coverage, all of our Montreal Canadiens coverage to one place. And so with Rocket Sports, we've partnered up with the Hockey News. The Hockey News legendary status in hockey in Canada. We've partnered up with the Hockey News. So Rocket Sports will now produce all of the content for the Montreal Canadiens on the Hockey News website. And the Hockey News website for the Montreal Canadiens is thn.com, thehockeynews.com/Montreal. Everything that we do will be there, and we'll be moving everything there. And you'll find already some articles by myself, from Chris G, from Amy. Our podcasts will be there. Our prospect coverage, as I said, everything will be there. And we're really excited about this as we prepare for next season. It's something that most of us grew up with. The Hockey News was, and I know now even Mike Raschel has talked about his Hockey News subscription, and Amy and Chris and myself. When I was growing up, it was my grandfather who would bring me my copy of the Hockey News, and it was a secondhand copy that he'd pick up at the barber shop. That didn't matter. I loved going through it cover to cover. And we're just so thrilled that we now have this partnership, Rocket Sports, with the Hockey News, and we're pleased to share it with you.
Yeah, very exciting news. I remember back in high school, for my birthday, I'd always get a subscription to the Hockey News. And one of my favorite ones was this special edition. It was all about the goalie masks over the years. So you got to go back all the way to the Clint Benedict days in the 1930s. You got to see his mask all the way up to the Jacques Plante, the first famous goalie mask, Gillis Gratton and his lion mask with the New York Rangers, all the way up to the more modern day goalie masks. So the Hockey News is a great product. They've been around forever. Definitely a great source, and we're very excited to start helping them out and to give them plenty of great Montreal Canadiens content.
And if that was enough, the Hockey News has its reputation. Well, so does Sports Illustrated. And Sports Illustrated has contracted with the Hockey News to provide all of Sports Illustrated's coverage. So we are having this Montreal Canadiens page. We will be providing content to the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated, which is tremendous. And are we going to change? No. We've been fiercely independent. We've been honest. It's taken us 15 years to kind of build trust with your audience, build credibility in the hockey community. And we're going to stay. That's what's made us successful with our readers and our listeners. And so we're going to stay the same. The same things that you have come to enjoy, and just broaden our coverage, and welcome a whole new audience, and we welcome also the audience that's now listening to us on YouTube, those who are listening to us on your favorite podcast app. We're growing, and I think this is exciting for all of us.
Yeah, lots of good content on YouTube as well. To find us, you just have to search @AllHabs, and you'll find it right there. Every Thursday, Amy Johnson puts out the Habs Hockey Report. And this past week, she put out an episode entitled Two Big Habs Trade Rumors. What will Kent Hughes do? So she talks about some of the stuff we talked about in segment 2 there. She gives her opinions on what the Habs could be doing. And honestly, great show. Honestly, Amy Johnson's been doing this every Thursday for the past little while. I make sure I watch it right away. Always leave a like and a comment. Amy Johnson loves to reply to all the comments. She's even read some of them on air if she likes them enough. And also, we would like to say that we popped a couple episodes of the Canadiens Connections podcast onto the YouTube channel. And we're going to continue to do that because it seems like everyone really enjoyed that. This past week, we reached a milestone, over 1,000 subscribers. So thank you very much to everyone who has subscribed to that YouTube channel. We'll continue to deliver great content to you. And same thing with the Canadiens Connection podcast on YouTube. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, let us know your thoughts. We'll be going through and responding to as many people as possible. We really appreciate all those who have checked it out. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button too. We don't want you to miss a single episode, and hit that notification bell too if you're worried about missing something. That way you get notified as soon as we put something into our YouTube channel, and you'll be the first one to be able to tune in and listen. Also, if you're not already subscribed to our two Rocket Sports Radio podcasts on your favorite podcasting app, make sure you do that as well. Weekly, every Tuesday, the Press Zone comes out. That's hosted by Amy Johnson and Patrick Williams. Sometimes you get Rick Stevens in there as well. That's going to be your premier source for the AHL, the Laval Rocket. Anything to do with the Habs prospects, that's going to be your best source to find out. And make sure you subscribe to this podcast, The Canadiens Connection. You can find that at canadiensconnection.fm. Hit the subscribe button because we're going to be here every single Saturday throughout the summer, so you're not going to want to miss a single episode.
And we've heard from so many, we're getting text message from so many listeners who are listening when they're out at the cottage, they're listening on their commute, they're listening while they're mowing the lawn. Take us everywhere you go. In the summer, and use your favorite podcast app to subscribe to, because there's going to be a lot happening this summer, and you want to be ready by when the time the season starts in the fall.
And we know that hockey coverage tends to go down in the summer. All your favorite radio stations and some of your other favorite podcasts might not cover the Montreal Canadiens the whole way through. We know certain people like to go out on vacations, but not us. We'll be here every single Saturday. So just like to reiterate, hit that subscribe button and make sure you're not missing a single episode. And now it's a good time to get to our Canadiens Connection question of the week. What's your draft day dream scenario for Kent Hughes? Trading up from number 5 in the draft or making a draft day trade to land Pierre-Luc Dubois? Make sure you reach out to us and let us know. And Rick, I'll get you one more time to let all the people know how they can reach out to us and let us know their thoughts.
Well, you can send us an email if you have a lot to say, and that's hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. Or a convenient way is to hit up our Rocket Sports text line. It's easy to remember. It's 5853-ROCKET.
And we did get a couple of messages from our listeners in the past week. We actually have 2 to get to. To start off, Devin from Summerside PEI reached out to us. And Rick, what did he have to say?
Devin texted, hey, I just found your show on YouTube. Hughes was bluffing, in Devin's opinion. That's Kent Hughes. Michkov has the talent, so he's going to want to come to the NHL as soon as he can. Take the Russian. Thanks for the great podcast, guys. Again, Devin in Summerside PEI. And he was referring to the fact that last week we talked about Kent Hughes, who said, listen, yes, Michkov is going to be in the KHL for 3 years, but there's nothing stopping him from signing a second contract, another contract. He mentioned that while he was at the Combine. But I think Devin has a point here that, if Michkov wants to play, wants to show that he's one of the best hockey players, he's going to want to come to the best league, and that is the NHL.
And we also got a message from a longtime listener, Dino from Gatineau. And actually, you get to hear me practice a little bit of my French when I read this out to you. Dino says, Salut, bien noche ami. Rocket Sports upcoming draft. My spider sense is tingling. I think Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon are up to something. I think they should stand pat, though, with those picks. It's a very deep draft. Use our selections in this one. It does not come around that often. Grass is not always greener on the other side. Let's keep what we have and build on it. That's his 2 cents, at least. So thank you very much to Dino. He also says he appreciates all the great work. So always appreciate hearing from Dino. He's been a longtime listener of ours, and he always sends us the best messages.
Absolutely. And if you send us messages, either by text or by email, we got a lot of messages this week. Take the time if you can to just put your name on it. Your first name is good, and the location, and that increases the chances that we're going to read it on the air.
So this upcoming weekend, this is the Father's Day weekend. So happy Father's Day to all the dads. I'll give a shout out to all the hockey dads as well. After growing up, I've realized how difficult it is to wake up for those 6 a.m. games on a Saturday. So we appreciate all the effort in that. And of course, in Montreal, it is F1 weekend. So we hope everyone enjoys that, or whatever it is that you're getting up to.
Happy Father's Day.
So that's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on your favorite podcast app. You can also share it on social media if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week. We'll be back here next Saturday, June the 24th, for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Visit allhabs.net for breaking news about the Montreal Canadiens.